The Cincinnati Bengals are coming off a huge 41-17 win on the road against a division foe that just so happened to be the Baltimore Ravens. There was a lot to like in this game from all sides of the football, but I want to focus on the defense, specifically the game plan that Lou Anarumo just cooked up against Lamar Jackson in this Ravens offense, because incoming chef's kiss, it was a masterpiece. In this game, the Bengals converted their base defense over to a 4-3 in order to add a little more mass to be able to combat this Ravens rushing attack. And they did it very, very well, which I'm going to touch up on more after I break down this play. But let's just take a look here. They're out in that 4-3 front, as I talked about. And if I'm the Ravens, man, I don't really want to run the football against this. This isn't a great look. They've got the numbers advantage here. 7 Bengals in the box versus 6 Ravens up on the line of scrimmage. They've got Pat Ricard to the right there helping out as well, along with those 5 offensive linemen. And as this play goes on, we're going to see that the numbers advantage gets even worse for the Baltimore Ravens. On this read option, Lamar Jackson's going to decide to give this ball to Le'Veon Bell. Sam Hubbard's being left unblocked. He's a really good edge defender. Does a nice job keeping his eyes in the backfield, containing the edge, keeping his hips parallel with the line of scrimmage. And you've even got Akeem Davis-Gaither, number 59 in the back end there, ready to scrape over the edge and help as long as he can beat Pat Ricard one-on-one in space, as Pat Ricard was ready to block him in case Lamar Jackson does keep this football and take this to the edge. But since the edge is protected well, this is going to be a give to Le'Veon Bell, and we still have even more unblocked Cincinnati Bengals when Le'Veon Bell goes to take this ball in the middle of the field. DJ Reader and Larry Ogunjobi make the job easy for linebackers. And I talked about how this 4-3 package was absolutely doable for the Cincinnati Bengals because of the talent they have. Not only a really deep, solid linebacking core this year, but that defensive line makes their job pretty easy. And so it's good to have 3 linebackers out there when they have these amount of just open gaps and unblocked situations where they can go ahead, unblocked, scotch-free, whatever you want to call it, and just shoot up into a gap and hold this to a minimal gain, even for a loss on some of these runs. Here you're going to see Logan Wilson go unblocked. He's able to penetrate this gap and force Le'Veon Bell to bounce this and try to cut it back, but there's just nowhere for him to go. DJ Reader and Larry Ogunjobi do fantastic jobs eating up double teams, and again, as I was talking about, it creates those unblocked opportunities for the linebackers. So that 7v6 advantage has just become even greater for the Bengals because now you've got even more guys unblocked than just one. It's not really just a one-on-one scenario, because Larry Ogunjobi and DJ Reader are eating up those double teams. So again, Wilson does end up getting blocked by number 70 here. He's able to come off his block, but Wilson still penetrates this gap and forces Bell to pick another direction. And as I said, there was just absolutely nowhere for him to go. This was a 1st and 10, and this minimal 2-yard gain leads to a 2nd and 8. And the Bengals' success stopping the run led to a lot of those longer down and distance situations, which forced the Ravens to throw the ball a lot more than they're used to. Heck, the Ravens passed the ball on 64% of their offensive snaps. They had 42 passing attempts to 24 rushing attempts. That is their largest number of the season. That is the largest portion of their offense taken up by passing attempts, 64%. The only game that even comes close was the Colts game where they passed the ball on 63% of their offensive snaps, but that was a whole different story. In that game, Lamar Jackson went 37 for 43, passed out for over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. The Ravens went out and passed the ball a lot because the Colts secondary was extremely banged up and they had no answers for the Ravens passing attack. In this game, the Ravens were forced to throw the football because they were getting into those longer down and distance situations, but unlike the Colts game, they weren't successful in throwing the football. This was a really poor game in terms of efficiency for that passing attack, and that was the exact opposite in that Colts game. As much as they had Latavius Murray out and this running back room was banged up, we still know that Lamar Jackson is an extremely dynamic runner. This run game can still have a lot of success, and it's a huge part of their identity. This is still a run-heavy team. Hey, as I was talking about, I'm sure you've seen this stat, but in 3 of their 7 games this year, the Ravens have more rushing attempts than they do passing attempts. That's a big number in today's NFL. This is still a very much run-heavy team, but the Bengals were able to, again, getting in that 4-3 package with all the talent they have in that front 7, they were able to stop the run early and put the Ravens in those difficult second and long, third and long situations where they were forced to throw the football. Now, as much as I liked what I saw in the front 7, and I'm going to continue touching up on them, I do want to give some credit where credit is due to the secondary and some of the things that Lou Anarumo did schematically back there. Specifically, that zone-heavy approach and touching up on the cover 3 a little bit. Now, they did run a lot of that picket fence, protect the sticks defense, which it's not really a name for it. I guess that's just what I'd call it. It's protect the sticks, that picket defense, which was interesting and it worked. And I'm going to get to that in a separate clip. But for now, I do want to focus on more the cover 3 and just the idea of them playing a lot of zone in general. Now, when they ran this cover 3 specifically, which they did a lot in this game, the Bengals were saying, hey, we want to prevent the deep ball. We want to protect the middle of the numbers. And obviously, when you play zone, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. So we're going to sacrifice the flats, those intermediate out routes. That's what we're going to leave open. And I absolutely love it. First of all, too, I want to mention this for run support. In zone coverage, I think it's better for run support when you're playing zone rather than man, because in zone, you've got your eyes in the backfield. You're more cognizant of where the quarterback is. So if Lamar Jackson gets out of the pocket and takes off with the football, and now he's getting upfield, your DBs, your linebackers even, they're gonna quickly recognize, hey, Lamar Jackson's on the run. Let's go help in run support. And yes, the secondary typically isn't great when it comes to run support, but the Bengals have a pretty good secondary when it comes to tackling. So it definitely will give you some help. So obviously there's that, but specifically in coverage, I thought their guys played really well. Jesse Bates was great as usual. Chidobe Awuzie made some really nice plays in this game. But the zone-heavy approach was smart because, all right, we're going to focus on those territories and on purposely, obviously as our sacrifice, we'll leave the flats open. We'll leave those intermediate routes open. As you can see here, the Bengals are in that cover 3. Mark Andrews gets wide open in the flat. And Lamar Jackson doesn't end up pulling the trigger here. I do think this is partially because Sam Hubbard does a really nice job getting in this passing lane, getting up in Jackson's face, and I'm not really too sure Lamar wanted to pull the trigger there, but the reason we want them throwing to the flats is because this is a team that really likes to operate within the numbers, and they're also prone to some deep shots to Marquise Brown that have worked out pretty well this season too. But statistically in the Lamar Jackson era, they're not a very successful team when it comes to throwing in the flats. First of all, they don't like to do it. They like to operate in the middle of the numbers. Lamar likes those bigger plays. He's not really a check down guy. So sometimes he'll totally ignore the guy in the flats or just miss him. And then when they do throw it there, they're just statistically not that successful. They don't have guys that make those turn a play, a 3-yard check down in the flats into something. It's just not really the Ravens' offense either. They're not too focused on making plays from there. Again, they're more deep shots in middle of the field, specifically, in between the numbers. So the Bengals knew that coming to that game, so we're playing a lot of zone. We're going to focus more on territories. Again, the cover 3, it's preventing the deep shot. We're trying to protect the numbers, and you can take those shots in the flat if you want. We know you're not very successful there. We know Lamar misses guys some there as well. And again, those intermediate routes as well. We saw a couple of those just not being able to connect. Lamar was not very successful throwing outside the numbers today on those outbreaking routes. So I thought that was a really good schematical thing that I picked up on that Lou Anarumo did against this Ravens offense. Now, the Bengals' success on first down was very, very important. But what was equally important was their success on those longer down and distance situations, or, even those third and medium sort of situations. And this is one of those examples where the Bengals, this is a theme that they had all game. This was a staple of their defense when they got into those second and long, third and medium sort of spots in the game. So they would read the Ravens personnel. Here, the Ravens only have 5 offensive linemen. They're going empty with 5 guys split out wide, a 2x3 set. So what are the Bengals going to do on a lot of these situations, including this one? They're going to count the amount of pass protectors the Ravens have. In this scenario, it's 5. They're going to match it with +1. So again, the Ravens come out with 5 pass protectors here. The Bengals are going to put 6 guys on the defensive line. If the Ravens had 6, which they did in some scenarios, the Bengals would match it with 7. The reason for this is it's going to simulate a blitz, and it actually is going to be a blitz. And what they're going to do is this will always leave at least one guy unblocked. Sometimes it even left 2 guys unblocked because one Raven cannot block 2 Bengals. So at least one guy's going to come unblocked, and almost every time it was somebody coming off the edge. And this is important because where do you want to pressure Lamar Jackson from? Do you want to pressure him from the edge or up the middle? Well, if I'm going to get a free rusher, I want him coming off the edge. If I get a free rusher coming up the middle, but then everybody else is blocked, Lamar Jackson is just going to slip out the back door. He's going to get out of the pocket, and that's the last thing the Bengals wanted. People talked about the Bengals prioritize stopping the run. Let's take that one step further. They prioritized keeping Lamar Jackson inside the pocket. And they did a fantastic job of it. He didn't get outside the pocket much. He did I remember one time he did, and it led to a 15-yard catch, one of the best passing plays of the day. But when he was kept inside the pocket, Lamar Jackson was not very successful. Jackson likes to escape the pocket and hold on to the football, and the Bengals did not let him do either of those things. They kept him outside the pocket, and they forced him to get rid of the ball quickly because these blitzes off the edge rushers did a really good job all day getting upfield to make sure that don't just rush Lamar Jackson head on. Don't give him that back door. So we're not playing contain, but we're also not just rushing him head on. It's a mix of both. We're containing the edge, making sure he doesn't get outside the pocket, but we're also getting pressure on him and forcing him to get the ball out quickly. Now, obviously, this is going to lead to a disadvantage in the secondary. And the Bengals have a good secondary, don't get me wrong, but 5 DBs versus 5 receivers. And in other cases, it would be, if they go out there with 6 offensive linemen, or 6, pass protectors, the Bengals would obviously match it with 7, and that would lead to a 4v4 in the secondary. That's advantage offense. But the Bengals did a couple good things here. One was the picket fence approach. They were constantly playing the soft coverage. Sometimes it was zone. There was one play I might end up showing that was a man look, but it was a heavy off man. So you're not going to beat with press and give up the easy first down. It's that picket fence that I was talking about. Protect the sticks. We don't want to give up the big play. We don't want to give up the first down. And if we can't avoid it, let's not try to get into that 4th and short situation, that 4th and 1, 4th and 2, where they can go for it and potentially really pick up the first down. They're okay with a minimal gain, but what they're really trying to do is cause either a sack, an incompletion, or, again, a very, very small gain. They're okay. You have to make a sacrifice defensively on every single play. Here, the sacrifice is giving up some space underneath, but they didn't give up as much as you'd think because there was a wrinkle in this blitz. Those guys in the middle there that you can see rushing did not stay rushing the entire time. Typically, at least 1, sometimes even 2 of those guys rushing up the middle, typically the linebackers, would occupy a block. So, they'd rush at one of the guards or the center to occupy a block to ensure that somebody off the edge was getting left unblocked. And then once it was time, they'd drop back into coverage to add a little extra support over the middle of the field, give you an extra guy or two. And it did help in this game. Here, you're going to see it literally is a huge part of this play. I'll run it. This pass ends up getting deflected. Now, this is by a lineman who doesn't end up dropping back into coverage, but a big part too, if you didn't drop back into coverage, but you're still rushing up the middle, you were a little more focused on keeping your eyes in the backfield than you were actually getting to Lamar Jackson. You're still trying to push the pocket a little bit, but you're more focused on keeping eyes on Lamar Jackson in case he does run around and potentially batting a pass down, which is what happens here. I mean, Devin Duvernay is open. This linebacker that they have dropping back is not in a position to, intercept this pass or anything like that. Now, is Duvernay probably going to pick up the first down here? I don't think so. but it still would have gone for something. It makes the field goal attempt easier, maybe puts fourth down into play. So this is an important batted pass. And it's a good play by their defensive line, and it was a very smart strategy. I absolutely adored this idea by Lou Anarumo. Get somebody unblocked off the edge, and for those middle guys, you're going to have one or two dropping back into coverage once they occupy a block and get somebody, again, unblocked. But you're also going to keep some guys there with their eyes in the backfield to potentially bat down a pass, but also in case Lamar Jackson does scramble or step up into the pocket, you have guys there to try and stop him. You have that second line of defense because Lamar Jackson can still get outside the pocket by just simply running up the middle if you leave it open. But smartly, the Bengals didn't. I know I only showcased a few plays there, but I felt like they all did a really good job exemplifying some of the main themes and staples of this Bengals defense that we saw in Sunday's dominating win over the Baltimore Ravens. And give credit where credit's due, Lou Anarumo just cooked up one of the best defensive game plans I have seen to go up against and combat Lamar Jackson in this unique, explosive Ravens offense ever since Lamar Jackson joined the league. Yes, it was that good. It was extremely impressive, and Lou Anarumo has been doing this kind of stuff all year. He's performed like one of the best defensive coordinators, and for those of you who are after his head in the offseason, it turns out all the guy needed was a little bit of time to get the talent in here to finally execute and expand upon those game plans because he's coached really, really well this season. So, as Malik Wright would say, I hope the respect is just as loud as the disrespect was. My name's Aidan Maher, and I'll see you guys next time.